In the summer before the second year, we're asked in the directing program if there are any like novels, books, movies, really anything that we might like to adapt. And I remembered this book, Affinity, from a high school English class. And I knew that Sarah Waters had had adaptations of her other work, but not a play version of Affinity. And we put in a pitch to her team in the middle of my second year as a writing pair. We pitched that way. And it was specifically for like a directing thesis. So that was always sort of ingrained in the infrastructure, at least of the original pitch. And their team came back from that pitch and said, yes, go ahead.
And also in the second year, the dramaturgy department has an adaptation class that's required for all of us. So I convinced the professor of that adaptation class, Jill Morris, who's lovely, to let me bring a co-adaptation to that. And so we did a lot of sort of the initial groundwork through that adaptation class infrastructure. So creating the outline and doing a lot of the initial transcriptions came through coursework from the dramaturgy department.
I then audited an adaptation class in the playwriting department that was taught by Sarah Rule. And in that class, we already had a draft by that point that was organized in some form. And that class became about figuring out how to make it less novelistic and more theatrical. So a lot of the devices that are ultimately in the production, like the lady chorus, these sort of choreographed interludes, these more theatrical gestures of how time passes, those came into existence throughout the course of that year, in part influenced by that class and being given sort of permission to take theatrical liberties, if you will, in that class. In addition to that, during the Zoom year, we did many readings on Zoom with actors who, were just like, okay, like I'll cop on a reading of this play all over the country, all over the world. Would sit and read drafts with us. They would read scenes, they'd read whole acts, and that was super helpful. And a really great, I think, example of how collaboration can operate among students at the school, of people just being game to read something, give feedback, and give their time. And that was really essential, I think, to figuring out how to get the draft into a place where it could be produced.
Making theater this year has not been easy by any means, but the collaborations formed and the generosity and patience that our castmates and designers have had through this process, I think, has been both the biggest surprise and one of sort of the surprising joys of this challenging process.
I think getting to be in a rehearsal space in which people are sometimes getting to like play with markers of identity for the first time and figure out what those are and like how they operate in a stage space in a play is really exciting. Getting to figure out, I think, the distinction between what's a novel and what's a play and where those boundaries are in collaboration with peers who are also asking those questions, who maybe have not been part of adaptation processes. I mean, like we also have not been part of this scale of an adaptation process before. Getting to do that together with peers has been really, really exciting.
At the top of Act 2 in the play, Selena, who's the incarcerated woman and spiritualist in the play, is having an emotional response to another incarcerated woman breaking out or sort of destroying her cell, having an intense reaction to being imprisoned. And she talks about herself as both a woman and a beast within that scene. But what we were realizing in rehearsal was that we were actually missing the conflict in that scene. And so I pulled up the scene from the book and I read a few pages to the actors being like, hi, I think we have actually forgotten this part of the book. And as I read it to them, they and Alex had this realization of like, oh yes, we actually desperately need this conflict in order for this scene to work, in order for the intimacy to escalate within that.
Hello, here is the book. Like, let's actually see what we cut out. Is that helpful to you? Is it not? And for her to be able to say like, yes, no, maybe, or this, was exciting collaboratively.